The Vulcan exploration vessel, Stargazer, touched down in the Rocky Mountains, forever changing humanity's place in the cosmos. As the sleek alien craft settled on the rugged terrain, a hastily assembled human delegation, led by United Nations Representative Dr. Elena Chen, waited with bated breath. The moment they'd all prepared for had arrived. First contact with an extraterrestrial species. Captain Horus, the Vulcan commander, emerged from the ship. His tall, slender frame and pointed ears marked him as distinctly non-human. He approached the delegation with measured steps, his expression a mask of calm curiosity. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her heart racing, but her voice steady as she began the formal greeting they'd rehearsed countless times. The exchange of words between human and alien was cut short by a deafening rumble. The ground shook, and a cascade of boulders came hurtling down the mountainside. Chaos erupted as both humans and Vulcans scrambled for safety. In that moment of panic, one man's actions would set the tone for humanity's introduction to the galactic stage. Richard Mason, a former Navy SEAL turned mountain rescue specialist, reacted on pure instinct. He lunged forward, pushing Dr. Chen out of harm's way as a massive boulder bore down on her. The rock struck Mason instead, pinning him to the ground with a sickening crunch of bone and flesh. Captain Horus watched the scene unfold with a mixture of horror and fascination. The Vulcan's logical mind struggled to comprehend the human's disregard for personal safety. On his homeworld, such selfless acts were rare, if not unheard of. As the dust settled, the gravity of the situation became clear. Mason lay broken and bleeding, yet remarkably conscious. His teeth were gritted against the pain, his eyes focused and alert. The Vulcans observed with growing astonishment as human medics rushed to Mason's aid, working swiftly and efficiently to stabilize him. "Get him to the medical facility now," Dr. Chen ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. The Vulcan medical officers, initially hesitant, stepped in to assist. They marveled at Mason's resilience as he was loaded onto a stretcher, his vital signs far stronger than they would expect given the severity of his injuries. As the rescue helicopter lifted off, carrying Mason to the nearest hospital, Captain Horus turned to Dr. Chen. "Your world," he said, his voice tinged with a mix of respect and concern, "it is far more dangerous than we anticipated." The concept of a death world was alien to the Vulcans. Their home planet was stable, predictable. Earth, with its shifting tectonic plates, extreme weather, and myriad environmental hazards, was unlike anything they had encountered in their exploration of the galaxy. As news of the alien landing spread, the world erupted into a frenzy of excitement and fear. Military forces across the globe went on high alert, their commanders unsure whether to treat the Vulcans as guests or potential invaders. Social media platforms were flooded with conspiracy theories, each more outlandish than the last. In New York, the United Nations convened an emergency session. World leaders debated humanity's response to the Vulcan arrival, their discussions heated and fraught with tension. The stakes couldn't be higher. The future of human-alien relations hung in the balance. Meanwhile, at the mountain base, Captain Horus made an unexpected request. "We wish to study your physiology," he said to Dr. Chen, "particularly that of the injured human. His resilience is remarkable." Dr. Chen hesitated. The request made sense from a scientific standpoint, but the ethical implications were staggering. "I'll have to consult with our leadership," she replied cautiously. "We have strict protocols regarding medical research." As the political drama unfolded on the world stage, Richard Mason fought his own battle in the hospital. His recovery, monitored closely by both human and Vulcan medical staff, defied the aliens' expectations. Mason's body, forged by evolution on a high-gravity world fraught with danger, demonstrated healing capabilities that left the Vulcans in awe. It was during this recovery that an unexpected connection formed. Lyra, a Vulcan medical officer assigned to monitor Mason's progress, found herself drawn to the human's resilience and humor in the face of adversity. Their growing friendship challenged preconceptions on both sides, becoming a microcosm of the larger cultural exchange taking place. As Mason regained his strength, Captain Horus revealed the true purpose of their mission to Earth. The galaxy, it seemed, was embroiled in conflict, and the Vulcans were seeking potential allies, or soldiers. They had come to assess humanity's capabilities, and Mason's actions had given them much to consider. The revelation sent shockwaves through the human leadership. The prospect of joining an interstellar conflict was both thrilling and terrifying. As diplomats and military leaders grappled with the implications, one thing became clear. The day aliens learned to fear Deathworlders had arrived, and humanity's place in the cosmos would never be the same. The world spun into chaos as news of the Vulcan arrival spread like wildfire. Governments scrambled to respond, their reactions as varied as the nations themselves. In the United States, President Amelia Hawthorne called an emergency cabinet meeting, her face etched with concern as she addressed her advisors. "Gentlemen, ladies, we're facing an unprecedented situation," she said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "Our response will shape the future of humanity." Across the globe, similar scenes played out in corridors of power. Some nations viewed the aliens as potential saviors, others as harbingers of doom. The divide grew deeper with each passing hour. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly, but they were quickly challenged by a clear, authoritative voice. "And what if our show of strength is perceived as aggression?" Dr. Elena Chen countered, rising from her seat. "We're dealing with an advanced species capable of interstellar travel. Cooperation and scientific exchange are our best paths forward." But to the world, and especially to the Vulcans, Mason's actions were far from ordinary. Lyra, the Vulcan medical officer assigned to study his recovery, spent hours each day at his bedside, meticulously recording data and engaging in conversation. "Your pain tolerance is remarkable," Lyra noted, her slender fingers tapping on a datapad. "And your rate of cellular regeneration exceeds our models for humanoid species." Mason chuckled, wincing slightly at the movement. "That's just good old human stubbornness, I guess. We don't like to stay down when we're knocked over." As days passed, their conversations deepened. Mason regaled Lyra with tales of Earth's history, its diverse cultures, and the complex tapestry of human emotions. In return, Lyra shared insights about Vulcan society, their advanced technology, and their logical approach to life. "You mean you guys never just do something for fun?" Mason asked incredulously during one of their talks. Lyra tilted her head, considering. "We find satisfaction in productive pursuits, but fun, as you describe it, no, that's not part of our culture." "We are part of a galactic alliance," Horus explained, his usually stoic features betraying a hint of concern. "We are engaged in a conflict with a species known as the Krelthax. We came to Earth seeking potential allies." The revelation sent shockwaves through the human leadership. The prospect of an interstellar war was both thrilling and terrifying. As the implications sank in, General Steele saw an opportunity. Despite reservations from some members, the UN approved the proposal. A multinational task force was quickly assembled, drawing the best soldiers and strategists from around the world. To everyone's surprise, Richard Mason was recruited as a key participant. "Your unique experience with the Vulcans makes you invaluable," General Steele explained to Mason, who was still recovering in his hospital bed. Mason nodded, a mix of excitement and apprehension coursing through him. "I'll do whatever I can to help, sir." As preparations for the joint exercise began, Earth's scientific community worked feverishly to integrate Vulcan technology with human systems. The collaboration led to breakthroughs that would have taken decades to achieve otherwise. Vulcan scientists watched in amazement as their human counterparts tackled problems with innovative solutions born from generations of adapting to Earth's harsh environment. The atmosphere of cautious optimism was shattered when Vulcan sensors detected an unknown ship entering the solar system. Captain Horus's face paled as he delivered the news to UN officials. "It's a Krelthax scout ship," he said, his voice tight with tension. We were unaware they had penetrated this far into the sector." Earth's military forces snapped into high alert. The planned exercise transformed overnight into a real-world defense operation. Despite not being fully recovered, Mason insisted on joining the frontline team. "I can't sit this out," he told Lyra, who had come to check on him. "I need to be out there." Lyra studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Then I will join you, as a medical officer." Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As the joint Human-Vulcan Defense Force prepared to deploy, a palpable sense of anticipation filled the air. Engineers worked around the clock, integrating the latest hybrid technologies into their weapons and defenses. Soldiers from nations that had been adversaries days ago now stood shoulder to shoulder, united against a common threat. In the command center, General Steele surveyed the holographic display of Earth's defensive positions. Captain Horus stood beside him, offering insights on Krelthak's tactics. "They're aggressive, cunning," Horus explained, "but they've never encountered a species like yours before." Steele nodded grimly. "Let's hope that gives us an edge." As the Krelthak scout ship drew closer, the defense force moved into position. On a specially outfitted transport, Mason checked his gear one last time. Beside him, Lyra prepared her medical equipment, her movements precise and efficient. "Ready?" Mason asked, flashing her a smile that belied the gravity of the situation. The transport's engines roared to life, carrying them towards humanity's first extraterrestrial confrontation. As Earth grew smaller behind them, the vastness of space stretched out before them, holding both promise and peril. The joint Human-Vulcan force accelerated towards their rendezvous with the Krelthak scout, and with it, the next chapter in humanity's cosmic journey. Destiny. As they approached the red planet, tension mounted aboard the human vessel. Mason, strapped into the pilot's seat, felt the familiar rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. Beside him, Lyra monitored the ship's systems, her slender fingers dancing across the control panel. "Krelthak scout detected," a crisp voice announced over the comm. "Bearing 035, closing fast." Mason's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. The alien ship's trajectory suggested it was attempting to flee rather than engage. A grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Not so fast," he muttered, hands tightening on the controls. "All units, execute maneuver Delta 7. The human ships responded with practiced precision, their movements fluid and coordinated. Mason's vessel took point, leading the charge as they outflanked the Krelthak scout. The alien ship's evasive maneuvers grew increasingly erratic as it found itself boxed in by the Earth-Vulcan fleet. "Impressive," Lyra commented, a hint of admiration in her voice. "Your tactical adaptability exceeds our initial assessments." Mason allowed himself a quick glance at his Vulcan companion. "We're full of surprises." The moment of levity was short-lived. As the human ships closed in, the Krelthak's vessel unleashed a barrage of energy weapons. Blinding beams of light sliced through the void, connecting with several Earth vessels. Alarms blared as reports of damage flooded the comms. "Direct hit on the USS Excelsior," a panicked voice shouted. "Their hull's been breached." Mason's fists tight as he watched the stricken ship veer off course, trailing debris and atmosphere. His fingers flew across the controls, adjusting their formation to compensate for the loss. "Our weapons aren't penetrating their shields," Lyra reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Conventional armaments appear ineffective." "They're shield harmonics," he said, excitement creeping into his voice. "There's a vulnerability we can exploit. If we modulate our weapons to match the frequency of their shield oscillations, we might be able to punch through." "Implement Mason's plan," Captain Horus ordered, his voice crackling over the comm. "All ships recalibrate weapons and prepare to engage." The next few minutes were a blur of activity as the fleet adjusted their tactics. Mason led the charge, his ship darting through the maelstrom of energy beams and debris. He could feel the G-forces pressing him into his seat as he pushed the vessel to its limits. Mason fought to keep the ship under control as the atmosphere vented into space. His protective suit inflated, saving him from the deadly vacuum, but the pain in his side intensified. He tasted blood. "Status report," he barked, ignoring the stabbing agony in his ribs. Lyra's fingers flew over her console. "Life support at 60%. Weapon systems still online. Mason, you're injured." Despite the damage to his ship and his own injuries, Mason pressed on. He coordinated the attack, guiding the fleet's efforts to exploit the weakness he'd identified in the Krelthak shields. Lyra rose to join him, medical kit in hand. "I'm coming with you," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "You'll need medical support." Together, they led a mixed team of humans and Vulcans onto the crippled Krelthax vessel. The alien ship's interior was a maze of twisting corridors and pulsing organic technology. Mason's team moved swiftly, their diverse skills complementing each other perfectly. They encountered the first Krelthax warriors in a large chamber near the ship's core. The aliens were massive, easily towering over even the tallest humans. Their chitinous armor gleamed under the ship's eerie bioluminescent lighting. The tide turned when Mason spotted what appeared to be the ship's data core. Fighting through the pain of his injuries, he made a dash for the alien technology. The Krelthax captain, a behemoth even larger than its subordinates, moved to intercept him. What followed was a test of raw willpower. Mason, battered and bleeding, faced off against the alien commander in hand-to-hand combat. The Krelthax's blows were devastating, but Mason's agility and experience fighting in varying gravities gave him an edge. With a final desperate lunge, Mason managed to outmaneuver the Krelthax captain. He seized the data core, ripping it free from its housing just as Lyra arrived to treat a critically wounded team member. "We've got it," Mason shouted, clutching the alien device. "Fall back to the ship." As they retreated, the remaining Krelthax crew, seeing their leader defeated and their ship in enemy hands, began to surrender. The human-Vulcan force had achieved the impossible. They'd won their first joint victory against a technologically superior foe. Back aboard the human vessels, the full impact of their success began to sink in. General Steele's voice, filled with pride and awe, came over the comms. "Outstanding work, all of you," he said. "You've not only neutralized a significant threat, but secured vital intelligence that could turn the tide of this war." Captain Horus, his ship now partially restored, added his own commendation. "Your performance exceeded all expectations," the Vulcan leader stated. "We would be honored to fight alongside Earth's forces in the conflict to come." As the adrenaline of battle faded, Mason's injuries reasserted themselves with a vengeance. He found himself in the medical bay, Lyra overseeing his treatment personally. She worked with quiet efficiency, combining Vulcan healing techniques with human medical practices. "You took quite a risk out there," Lyra said as she applied a regenerative compound to Mason's wounds. Mason winced, then managed a smile. "Calculated risk. That's what we humans do best." Lyra's expression softened, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "Indeed, your species continues to fascinate me." As Mason recuperated, reports began flooding in from Earth. Scientists were already poring over the captured Krelthax technology, making breakthroughs that promised to revolutionize human understanding of physics and engineering. But with these advancements came difficult questions. Earth's leaders debated the implications of joining an interstellar war. The decision would shape the future of humanity for generations to come. Mason, watching the news reports from his medical bed, felt the weight of the coming changes. He glanced at Lyra, who was studying a holographic display of Krelthax physiology. "Together, the path forward is uncharted, but I believe our alliance will prove stronger than any challenges we may face." Mason nodded, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursing through him. As he prepared to respond, an urgent notification flashed across the medical bay's display screen. "All personnel report to briefing room A3 immediately," General Steele's voice boomed over the intercom. "This is not a drill." Exchanging a quick glance, Mason and Lyra hurried to the briefing room. The corridors buzzed with activity as humans and Vulcans alike rushed to their stations. Upon entering A3, Mason was struck by the tense atmosphere. General Steele stood at the front, his face etched with concern. "Ladies and gentlemen," Steele began, "the data core we captured has yielded critical information. We've identified a major Krelthax supply depot in a nearby star system. This facility is key to their logistics network, and neutralizing it could deal a significant blow to their war effort." Holographic displays flickered to life, showing detailed schematics of the alien base. Captain Horus stepped forward, his stoic Vulcan features betraying a hint of anticipation. "We propose a joint strike mission," Horus stated. "Our combined fleet will engage the Krelthax defenses, while a specialized ground team infiltrates and disables the facility. "Not so fast," a new voice interjected. Dr. Elena Chen, Earth's leading xenobiologist, strode into the room. "We've uncovered disturbing evidence suggesting Krelthak's infiltration of our communication networks. We can't rush into this without addressing potential security breaches." The room erupted into heated debate. General Steele called for increased security measures, while some Vulcan officers viewed the suggestion with skepticism. Mason observed the growing tension, recognizing the fragility of their newfound alliance. In the days that followed, Earth's United Nations convened to debate formal entry into the galactic conflict. Mason watched the proceedings from the Joint Human-Vulcan Research Facility in Nevada, where he now served as lead human liaison. The political divide mirrored the tension he'd witnessed in the briefing room. "The Krelthaks won't wait while we deliberate," General Steele argued passionately. "We must take the fight to them or risk annihilation." Dr. Chen countered, "Rushing headlong into an interstellar war could be disastrous. We need to prioritize defensive measures and explore diplomatic solutions." As the debate raged on without resolution, Mason focused on preparing for the impending mission. He worked closely with Lyra, their professional collaboration deepening their bond. Together, they developed new training protocols that combined human adaptability with Vulcan discipline. "Your species continues to surprise me," Lyra remarked as they observed a joint combat exercise. "Your unorthodox approaches often yield unexpected results." Mason grinned. "That's our specialty. Now let's see if we can surprise the Krelthaks." Their preparations were interrupted by the implementation of General Steele's new security protocols. Advanced screening procedures for all mission personnel caused delays and friction, particularly among the Vulcan contingent. "This is unnecessary and potentially offensive," a Vulcan science officer protested as he submitted to a biometric scan. Mason stepped in, attempting to smooth things over. "I understand your concerns, but these measures protect all of us. We're in this together, and we need to trust each other." Despite the challenges, the joint fleet finally launched. En route to the Krelthaks supply depot, Mason organized integrated training exercises, showcasing the unique strengths of both species. Humans demonstrated their improvisational skills in simulated combat scenarios, while Vulcans displayed their unparalleled analytical abilities in solving complex tactical puzzles. "Battle stations," Captain Horace commanded. "Engage according to protocol Theta 9. The space around them erupted into chaos as energy weapons crisscrossed the void. Human and Vulcan ships moved in perfect synchronization, their newly integrated tactics catching the Krelthaks off guard. Mason and his team seized the opportunity, boarding their stealth insertion craft. As the battle raged around them, they slipped past the Krelthaks' defenses and descended towards the asteroid base housing the supply depot. The landing was rough, the asteroid's low gravity and jagged terrain presenting immediate challenges. Mason's team emerged from the craft, their specialized suits compensating for the harsh conditions. "Atmosphere's toxic," Lyra's voice crackled over the comm from the command ship. "Suit integrity is critical. Be advised of extreme temperature fluctuations." Mason signaled his team forward. They moved swiftly across the asteroid's surface, using natural formations as cover. Ahead loomed the imposing structure of the Krelthaks facility, its alien architecture a stark contrast to the barren landscape. As they approached the base's perimeter, Krelthaks defenders emerged. The aliens were even more formidable in person, their massive forms encased in chitinous armor. Mason's team engaged, their human Vulcan developed weapons proving effective against the Krelthaks' defenses. The team fought their way through the outer defenses, their diverse skills complementing each other perfectly. Human adaptability combined with Vulcan focus allowed them to overcome each obstacle. As they penetrated deeper into the facility, Lyra's voice came over the comm once more, her tone urgent. "Mason, I'm detecting anomalous readings from your team's biomonitors. There's some kind of neurotoxin in the air. Your filters won't hold forever." Finally, they reached the central control hub. As Mason's team secured the room, the true nature of the facility became clear. "This isn't just a supply depot," one of the human tech specialists exclaimed, examining the alien consoles. "It's a full-scale weapons production center. Mason's mind raced, quickly assessing the strategic implications. This discovery could change the entire course of the war. He made a split-second decision. "Change of plans," he announced. "We're not destroying this place. We're going to capture it intact." His team looked at him in shock, but quickly rallied. They began the arduous process of decrypting the Krelthax systems, racing against time as enemy reinforcements closed in. "Mason, what's your status?" General Steele's voice crackled over the comm. "The Krelthax fleet is regrouping. We can't hold them off much longer." "We need more time, sir," Mason replied, his fingers flying over an alien interface. "This facility is far more valuable than we anticipated, requesting immediate reinforcements to secure our position." There was a moment of tense silence before Steele responded. "Understood. Committing additional forces now. Hold that position at all costs, Commander." As the space battle intensified above them, Mason and his team worked feverishly to turn the base's defenses against the approaching Krelthax ground forces. The fate of the mission, and perhaps the entire war, now rested on their ability to hold out against the alien counterattack. Mason looked around at his team, humans and Vulcans working seamlessly together under extreme pressure. Despite the dire circumstances, he felt a surge of pride. Whatever came next, he knew that this unlikely alliance had already achieved something remarkable. The first tremors of Krelthax bombardment shook the facility. Mason squared his shoulders and checked his weapon. The real fight was just beginning. Mason took a deep breath, steadying himself as the facility shuddered under another barrage. "Status report," he barked, moving swiftly between workstations. "Sir, we've gained access to the primary defense grid," a human technician reported, her fingers flying over the alien interface. "Rerouting controls now." Suddenly, the facility's automated turrets swiveled, their energy beams cutting through the air outside. The approaching Krelthax forces found themselves under fire from their own fortifications. Confusion rippled through their ranks as they scrambled for cover. "Impressive work," Lyra's voice crackled over the comm. "The Krelthax assault force is in disarray. Our fleet is pressing the advantage." As if in response to his words, Captain Horace's voice filled the command center. "Commander Mason, we're committing ground forces to your position. Prepare for reinforcements." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Human and Vulcan troops poured into the facility, methodically clearing sector after sector. Mason coordinated the assault from the central hub, directing forces and adapting strategies on the fly. During a lull in the fighting, one of the Vulcan science officers approached Mason. "Commander, we've detected an anomalous energy signature in the lower levels. It doesn't match any known Krelthax technology." Intrigued, Mason assembled a small team to investigate. They descended into the bowels of the facility, passing through corridors bearing scorch marks from recent firefights. The source of the energy signature turned out to be a hidden laboratory, its entrance concealed behind a holographic barrier. As they stepped inside, the team was met with rows of stasis pods and advanced medical equipment. "What is this place?" Mason muttered, his eyes scanning the alien text scrolling across multiple screens. A human scientist, quickly decrypting the data, let out a gasp. "Sir, this is a bioweapons research lab. They're developing—" "Oh, God." Mason moved to her side, his expression grim as he read the translated text. "A pathogen specifically engineered for humans. They're planning to unleash it on Earth." The revelation sent a chill through the team. Mason immediately relayed the information to both General Steele and the Vulcan High Command. Back on the command ship, Lyra pored over the transmitted data. Her voice, when it came through the comm, held a note of urgency. "Richard, I've identified a critical flaw in their research. The Krelthax have severely underestimated human immune response." Mason's brow furrowed. "Explain." "Earth's biosphere is far more diverse and aggressive than they anticipated. Your immune systems have evolved to combat a wide array of microscopic threats. This bioweapon, while still dangerous, would be far less effective than they intended." A wave of relief washed over Mason, quickly replaced by new hope. "So once again, Earth being a death world works in our favor. Let's make sure they never get a chance to refine this weapon." The battle for the facility raged on. Mason's team, armed with their newfound knowledge, redoubled their efforts to secure every sector. The combined human-Vulcan force moved with increasing efficiency, their disparate tactics blending into a formidable whole. Just as victory seemed within reach, alarms blared throughout the command center. A massive Krelthax battlecruiser had arrived, its imposing form casting a shadow over the asteroid. "All units, brace for impact!" Captain Horace's voice rang out. The facility shook as the battlecruiser opened fire, its energy weapons threatening to turn the tide of the battle. Mason's mind raced, considering and discarding options. His eyes fell on the facility's main weapons array, an idea forming. "Captain Horace, I have a plan. It's risky, but it might be our only shot." He quickly outlined his strategy. Use the asteroid's newly acquired defense systems to launch a massive, coordinated assault on the battlecruiser. It would require precise timing and flawless execution from both the ground team and the space fleet. There was a moment of silence as Horace considered the plan. "It's audacious, Commander, but given the circumstances, I believe it's our best option. Proceed." Mason sprang into action, assembling a small team to man the main weapon array. They sprinted through the facility, dodging debris as the battlecruiser's attacks intensified. Reaching the control room, Mason took charge of the targeting systems. The alien interface was complex, but his recent experience with Krelthax technology allowed him to navigate it with growing confidence. "All units, prepare for synchronized attack," he announced. "On my mark." The next few minutes were a symphony of coordinated warfare. Mason's team unleashed a barrage from the asteroid's surface, while the human Vulcan fleet executed a series of precise maneuvers. Energy beams lanced through space, striking the battlecruiser at its weakest points. For a moment, it seemed as if their efforts were in vain. The massive ship absorbed the punishment, its return fire never ceasing. Then, with a series of brilliant explosions, its shields failed. The combined firepower of the Alliance tore into the battlecruiser's hull, ripping through vital systems. "Direct hit on their main reactor," Lyra reported, her usual calm tinged with excitement. "Their power systems are failing across the board." The Krelthax battlecruiser, once a symbol of unstoppable alien might, now drifted powerless in space. Its surrender came shortly after, marking a decisive victory for the human-Vulcan alliance. "Excellent work, all of you," he said, his eyes scanning the assembled human and Vulcan personnel. "This outpost will become our forward operating base against the Krelthax. Commander Mason, I want you to oversee the integration of this new technology into our systems." Mason nodded, already considering the implications of his new role. "Understood, sir. We'll make the most of this opportunity." As the general's hologram faded, Lyra approached Mason. "It seems our journey together is a long way to go," she said, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Mason returned the smile, feeling the weight of responsibility and the thrill of new challenges ahead. "Wouldn't have it any other way," he replied, turning to face the bustling command center. Human and Vulcan personnel worked side by side, their recent victory cementing the bonds between their species. Outside the facility's viewports, the stars beckoned. The war against the Krelthax was entering a new phase, with humanity poised to take a more active role in galactic affairs. As Mason watched a human engineer excitedly explain a concept to her Vulcan counterpart, he felt a surge of optimism. Together as allies and friends. The facility hummed with activity as human and Vulcan personnel worked tirelessly to integrate the captured Krelthax technology. Mason found himself in constant motion, overseeing the transformation of the asteroid base into a formidable forward operating position. Weeks passed, and news from Earth arrived via subspace transmission. General Steele's hologram materialized in the command center, his expression a mix of pride and drive. "Commander Mason, I have some important updates," Steele began. "The United Nations has formally declared war against the Krelthax. Earth is fully committed to this conflict now." Mason nodded, absorbing the weight of the announcement. "Understood, sir. How can we best support the war effort from here?" "That's why I'm calling, Mason. In light of your exemplary leadership during the capture of this facility, you're being promoted to full commander. Furthermore, I'm tasking you with leading a new elite unit, the Terran Vanguard." Mason's eyebrows rose. The Terran Vanguard, sir? Steele's hologram flickered as he elaborated. It's a joint human-Vulcan special operations unit, combining the best soldiers from Earth with Vulcan specialists. Your mission will be to spearhead high-risk operations against the Krelthax. We need to hit them hard and fast, using everything we've learned from this captured technology. Immediately, I'm sending you dossiers on potential recruits. Get your team assembled and start training. We'll need the Terran Vanguard ready for action as soon as possible. As Steele's hologram faded, Mason turned to find Lyra standing nearby, having overheard the conversation. "Congratulations, Commander," she said, her tone as measured as ever. "I trust you'll be requiring a chief medical officer for this new unit?" Mason grinned. "Wouldn't dream of doing this without you, Lyra. Let's get to work." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Mason pored over personnel files, selecting the cream of the crop from both human and Vulcan forces. Meanwhile, Earth scientists and engineers made significant breakthroughs in adapting Krelthax technology. Dr. Elena Chen, head of the research team, briefed Mason on their progress. "The advancements are remarkable, Commander," she explained, gesturing to a row of prototype weapons and armor. "We've improved our energy weapons efficiency by 200%, developed armor capable of withstanding direct hits from Krelthax plasma cannons, and even enhanced our spacecraft propulsion systems." Mason hefted one of the new rifles, marveling at its lightness and advanced targeting system. "Impressive work, Doctor. How soon can we get this equipment to our troops?" "Production is already ramping up. Your Terran Vanguard will be the first to field test these prototypes in combat situations." As the Terran Vanguard began their intensive training regimen, tensions arose between the human and Vulcan team members. Mason observed a heated exchange between Jack Cooper, a brash Marine from Texas, and Tavel, a stoic Vulcan tactical specialist. "Your approach is illogical and unnecessarily risky," Tavel stated, her voice calm but her posture rigid. Cooper scoffed. "Sometimes you gotta take risks to win, pointy ears. Can't always play it safe." Mason stepped in before the argument could escalate. "Both of you, cool it. Cooper, Tavel's right that we need to minimize unnecessary risks. But Tavel, Cooper's got a point too. We need to be flexible and willing to adapt in the field. That's what makes this unit special. We're combining the best of both our approaches." The two grudgingly nodded, and Mason made a mental note to pair them up for the next training exercise. These differences needed to be ironed out before they faced real combat. As the Terran Vanguard honed their skills, intelligence analysts worked tirelessly to process the data retrieved from the captured supply depot. One evening, as Mason was reviewing training footage, an urgent message came through from the analysis team. Once his team assembled, Mason outlined his plan. "We modify one of our stealth dropships, reinforcing it against the gravitational stresses and enhancing its atmospheric shielding. We go in low and fast, deploy on the surface, and infiltrate the facility on foot." Tavel tilted her head, considering. "The probability of success is low, but the potential strategic gain is significant." Mason looked at each of them in turn. "I won't lie, this mission is high risk, but I believe in this team. We've got the best of humanity and Vulcan working together. If anyone can pull this off, it's us." As the team began preparations for the daring assault, Dr. Chen burst into the room, her face pale. "Commander, you need to see this immediately." She pulled up a holographic display showing long-range sensor data, and massive energy signature was approaching the solar system, far larger than anything they'd encountered before. "It's a Krelthax invasion fleet," Chen explained, her voice shaking, "and it's headed straight for Earth. At their current speed, they'll arrive in less than 2 weeks." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Mason's mind raced, quickly reassessing their strategy. He turned to his team, his expression grim but determined. "Our mission just became even more critical," he said. "We're no longer just disrupting their communications. Now, we're Earth's best hope for stopping this invasion force before it reaches home." As Mason briefed Steele on the approaching invasion fleet and their plan to strike at the communications hub, the rest of the team sprang into action. The specially modified stealth dropship, now christened Humanity's Hope, was rushed through its final modifications. In the ship's cargo bay, Cooper and Tivell worked side by side, loading experimental weapons and equipment. Their earlier friction had been replaced by focused cooperation, both acutely aware of the stakes involved. Lyra approached Mason as he finished his call with Steele. "The medical bay is prepped, and I've developed some new combat stimulants to help us operate in the moon's high-gravity environment," she reported. Mason nodded, grateful for her thoroughness. "Good work. We're going to need every advantage we can get." As the final preparations were made, Mason gathered the Terran vanguard for one last briefing. He looked at each member of his team, human and Vulcan, each bringing unique skills and perspectives to the mission. "I won't sugarcoat this," he began. "What we're about to attempt is possibly the most important mission in human history. The fate of Earth and our place in the galactic community may well rest on our success. But I have faith in each and every one of you. Together, we represent the best of what our alliance can achieve." With that, the team boarded the Humanity's Hope. As the ship's engines hummed to life, Mason took his place in the pilot's seat, with Lyra as his co-pilot. The rest of the team strapped in, expressions of unbreakable spirit on their faces. As the dropship lifted off and accelerated into space, the massive Krelthax invasion fleet loomed in the distance, a constant reminder of the clock ticking down towards Earth's fate. Mason set course for the heavily fortified moon, knowing that the next few hours would determine not just the outcome of the war, but the future of humanity itself. The Humanity's Hope streaked through space, its advanced stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible against the backdrop of stars. Inside, the Terran vanguard made their final preparations, each member acutely aware of the monumental task that lay ahead. The fate of humanity itself rested on their shoulders as they hurtled towards their target. As the Humanity's Hope approached the gas giant's moon, the true nature of their challenge became apparent. The dense atmosphere roiled with violent storms, creating a treacherous barrier between the team and their objective. Mason's hands tightened on the controls as the ship began to shudder. "Entering the upper atmosphere now," he announced, his voice steady despite the growing turbulence. "Brace for impact." The dropship plunged into the swirling clouds, buffeted by gale-force winds and pelted with debris. Alarms blared as the ship's systems struggled to compensate for the extreme conditions. "Hull integrity at 82% and falling," Lyra reported, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "We're experiencing microfractures in the outer plating." "There!" Mason shouted, wrenching the controls to port. The ship lurched sickeningly, but steadied as it entered the eye of the storm. "Analyzing atmospheric composition," he muttered, studying the readouts. "Adjusting shield harmonics to match." The turbulence eased as Mason's quick thinking paid off. The Humanity's Hope sliced through the dense atmosphere, its modified shields now working in harmony with the hostile environment. "Impressive flying, Commander," Tivell observed from her station, a note of respect in her usually stoic voice. As they broke through the cloud cover, the moon's barren, crater-pocked surface came into view. Mason guided the ship towards a sheltered ravine, setting down with a gentle thud. The moment the team disembarked, the crushing gravity hit them like a physical blow. Cooper stumbled, his powered armor whining in protest as it struggled to compensate. Even the Vulcans, with their naturally higher muscle density, moved with visible effort. Tivell's expression remained neutral, but her movements were slow and deliberate. Mason's mind raced, assessing the situation. They couldn't hope to reach the objective like this. His gaze fell on the dropship's exposed gravitational stabilizers, and an idea sparked. "Dr. Chen," he called over the comm, "I need you to recalibrate the ship's grav generators. Can we create localized fields of Earth normal gravity around each team member?" There was a pause as Chen considered the request. "It's possible," she replied, "but it'll drain our power reserves significantly. We'd be cutting our potential flight time by half." Within minutes, Chen had worked her magic. Each member of the vanguard now moved within a bubble of familiar gravity, their suits projecting a shimmering field that pushed back against the crushing force of the moon. Mason signaled for the team to take cover. Moments later, a group of Krelthax soldiers rounded the corner, their insectoid forms encased in sleek environmental suits. Cooper raised his rifle, but Mason shook his head. In this atmosphere, energy weapons were unreliable at best. Close quarters, he mouthed, drawing a vibroblade from his belt. The ensuing skirmish was brutal and intimate. The humans, accustomed to Earth's gravity, found themselves at an advantage in the close combat. Cooper grappled with a Krelthax soldier, using his augmented strength to overcome the alien's natural armor. Meanwhile, Tavel worked furiously on a handheld device. With a burst of static, the Krelthax communications suddenly went silent. The aliens faltered, their coordinated movements becoming erratic without their tactical network. As the last Krelthax fell, Lyra rushed to tend to the wounded. Cooper clutched his side, where a lucky strike had penetrated his armor. "Can't breathe," he wheezed, his face pale beneath his helmet. Color returned to Cooper's face as the hybrid treatment took effect. He nodded gratefully to Lyra, then turned to Mason. "Ready to keep going, Commander." They pressed on, encountering sporadic resistance as they neared the facility. Each engagement was a test of their growing synergy, humans providing the brute force, while the Vulcans offered tactical insights and technological solutions. Finally, they reached the outer perimeter of the communications hub. A shimmering energy shield enveloped the structure, its surface crackling with arcs of electricity. Mason studied the barrier intently, noting the way it flickered and wavered in certain spots. The atmosphere, he realized aloud, it's corroding the shield emitters. He quickly formulated a plan, directing the team to plant shaped charges at specific points along the shield's edge. With a series of carefully timed detonations, they created a temporary gap in the barrier. "Go! Go! Go!" Mason shouted, leading the charge into the facility. Inside, they faced waves of Krelthax defenders. The close confines of the corridors negated much of the aliens' technological advantage, playing to the humans' strengths in hand-to-hand combat. Tavel's voice cut through the chaos of battle. "Commander, I'm detecting a massive data repository in the central hub. This facility contains far more than simple communications relay equipment." Mason's heart raced at the implications. "Change of plans," he announced. "We're not destroying this place. We're going to take every bit of data we can get our hands on." As they fought their way towards the central control room, the resistance grew fiercer. Mason coordinated their efforts, using the Vulcans' analytical skills to predict enemy movements and set up kill zones. They burst into the control room, quickly overpowering the surprised Krelthax technicians. Mason rushed to the central console, his eyes widening as he took in the wealth of information scrolling across the screens. "This is it," he breathed. "Complete invasion plans, fleet deployments, weapons schematics, everything we need to turn this war around." As Tavel began the data extraction process, alarms blared throughout the facility. "Significant enemy reinforcements detected," she reported. "Estimated time to arrival, 3 minutes." Mason's mind raced, formulating a defensive strategy. He accessed the facility's systems, reprogramming security turrets and sealing off entire sections to funnel the approaching Krelthax into choke points. "How much longer?" he asked Tavel, ducking as a stray energy bolt sizzled overhead. "Data transfer at 67%, she replied, her fingers flying over the alien keyboard. "Estimated completion in 4 minutes, 12 seconds. Mason gritted his teeth. They'd be cutting it close. He was about to order the team to prepare for a fighting retreat when a new alarm sounded. "Unidentified contact approaching under flag of truce," Lyra announced, her voice tinged with disbelief. Before Mason could respond, the doors to the control room hissed open. A lone Krelthax stood in the entrance, her hands raised in a universal gesture of surrender. "I am Dr. Zexara," she announced in halting English. "I come to offer aid against my people's madness." Mason kept his weapon trained on the newcomer, his mind racing. Could this be a trap, or had they just encountered an unexpected ally in the heart of enemy territory? As the sounds of approaching Krelthax forces echoed through the corridors, Mason knew he had to make a decision, and fast. The fate of the mission, and possibly the entire war, hung in the balance. Mason's eyes locked with the Krelthax scientist, his mind racing through possibilities. The sounds of approaching enemy forces grew louder, leaving no time for hesitation. Cooper, cover the door. Tavel, how's that data transfer? 89% complete, Commander, Tavel responded, her fingers still flying over the alien console. Mason made his decision. Dr. Zexara, if you're genuine about helping us, now's the time to prove it. Can you lock down this facility's security systems? The Krelthax moved swiftly to a nearby terminal, her multi-jointed fingers dancing across the interface. I can do better than that, she chittered. I'm initiating a cascading systems failure. It will buy us time and destroy any data we leave behind. Alarms blared as emergency lighting bathed the control room in an eerie red glow. Mason felt the deck plates vibrate beneath his feet as distant explosions rocked the facility. Transfer complete, Tavel announced. Then we're gone, Mason ordered. Dr. Zexara, you're coming with us. Lyra, Cooper, take point. Move. The team fought their way back through the twisting corridors, now filled with panicked Krelthax soldiers, more concerned with evacuation than engaging the intruders. They reached the humanity's hope, just as the facility's structural integrity began to fail. Mason gunned the engines, pushing them to their limits as they punched through the moon's turbulent atmosphere. The dropship shuddered violently, but held together long enough to break free of the gas giant's gravitational pull. Set course for Earth, maximum speed, Mason commanded, allowing himself a moment of relief. We did it. We actually did it. The journey back to Earth was tense, filled with debriefings and strategy sessions. Dr. Zexara proved to be a wellspring of information, providing critical insights into Krelthax tactics and technology. Mason found himself impressed by the alien scientist's courage and dedication to stopping her species' aggressive expansion. As they approached Earth, the combined human-Vulcan fleet came into view. Mason had never seen such a concentration of firepower, sleek Vulcan cruisers interspersed with the more utilitarian, but no less deadly human warships. General Marcus Steele wasted no time upon their arrival. The War Council convened immediately, with Mason and his team presenting their findings. The room buzzed with a mixture of excitement and apprehension as the full scope of the intelligence became clear. This changes everything, Steele declared, his weathered face set in stubborn persistence. We now have a fighting chance. Commander Mason, your team has done the impossible. Dr. Zexara stepped forward, her alien features difficult to read but her voice steady. The Krelthax rely heavily on a centralized command structure. Disrupt that, and their entire invasion force becomes vulnerable. The revelations sparked a flurry of activity. Earth's finest minds, human and Vulcan alike, poured over the captured data, working tirelessly to integrate the new intelligence into their defense plans. Mason watched in awe as scientists and engineers pushed the boundaries of what was possible, developing prototypes that merged Krelthax technology with human and Vulcan systems. In the midst of the frantic preparations, Mason found himself drawn to Lyra. The shared danger and triumph of their mission had forged a connection between them that transcended their cultural differences. One evening, as they stood watching Earth's combined fleet maneuver in orbit, Lyra spoke softly. I never understood humans' capacity for hope in the face of overwhelming odds, she admitted, but now I find myself sharing in it. Mason smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the simulated sunlight of the space station. Hope's all we've got sometimes, that and each other. Their moment was interrupted by an urgent summons from General Steele. The Krelthax invasion force had been detected entering the outer solar system. It was time to put their plans into action. Mason proposed a daring preemptive strike using the humanity's hope to infiltrate the enemy formation and plant the new EMP devices on key command ships. The plan was risky, but the potential payoff was too great to ignore. As the combined fleet took up defensive positions throughout the solar system, Mason prepared his team for their most crucial mission yet. The humanity's hope had been retrofitted with the latest stealth technology, making it all but invisible to Krelthax sensors. They launched under the cover of a diversionary attack, slipping past the outer picket ships of the Krelthax armada. Mason's piloting skills were pushed to their limits as he wove through the massive invasion fleet, avoiding detection by the narrowest of margins. One by one, they planted the EMP devices on the designated command ships. Each successful placement brought them closer to victory, but also increased the risk of discovery. The tension in the cockpit was palpable as they approached their final target, the Krelthax flagship itself. Just as they maneuvered into position, a patrol of enemy fighters veered towards them. Mason's hands tightened on the controls, his mind racing through options. In a split-second decision, he fired up the engines and darted towards another section of the fleet. "Exactly," Mason replied, a grim smile on his face. "We're going to let them see us, just not where we need to be." The gambit worked. The patrol gave chase, drawing attention away from the flagship. In the ensuing confusion, Mason doubled back, giving Tavel the precious seconds she needed to plant the final device. "It's done," she reported, her usual stoic tone tinged with excitement. Mason didn't waste a moment. "All ships, this is Commander Mason. Operation Lights Out is a go. I repeat, Lights Out is a go." Across the solar system, the human Vulcan fleet sprang into action. The EMP devices activated simultaneously, sending waves of energy cascading through the Krelthax formation. Command ships went dark, their shields failing, and communication systems scrambled. The battle for Earth began in earnest. Mason pushed the Humanity's Hope to its limits, racing back to rejoin the main fleet. Behind them, the Krelthax invasion force fell into disarray, easy prey for the coordinated attacks of the Allied fleet. As they approached the front lines, Mason watched in awe as human ships darted and weaved with incredible agility, their pilots pushing themselves to extremes that even the Vulcans found impressive. The harsh conditions of Earth had bred a kind of resilience and adaptability that was proving to be a crucial advantage. As the Humanity's Hope docked with the flagship, Mason steeled himself for the challenges ahead. The fate of Earth and humanity's place in the galactic community would be decided in the crucible of this battle. Whatever the outcome, Mason knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The Humanity's Hope docked with a metallic clang, and Mason led his team onto the flagship's bustling command deck. General Steele stood at the central holographic display, his face etched with concentration as he surveyed the unfolding battle. "Commander, glad you made it back in one piece," Steele said, his eyes never leaving the display. "We've got a situation developing." Mason stepped up to the hologram, taking in the swirling mass of red and blue indicators representing the Krelthax and Allied fleets. A large cluster of enemy ships was reforming, pushing towards Earth with single-minded purpose. "They're regrouping faster than we anticipated," Mason observed, his mind already racing through potential countermoves. Steele nodded grimly. "We've implemented the multi-layered defense strategy. Orbital platforms are online, creating an energy shield grid around the planet. It's our first line of defense, but it won't hold forever against their firepower." As if on cue, the holographic display flickered, showing a massive wave of Krelthax ships surging towards Earth's defensive lines. The battle entered its critical phase, with humanity's future hanging in the balance. "Sir, request permission to lead the Terran Vanguard in a series of surgical strikes," Mason said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We can target their command ships, disrupt their formation." Steele considered for a moment, then nodded. "Approved. Take your team and whatever resources you need. Make it count, Commander." Within minutes, Mason was back aboard the Humanity's Hope, leading a squadron of elite human pilots. They weaved through the chaotic space battle, debris fields, and the husks of destroyed ships. Mason's hands flew over the controls, executing maneuvers that would have been impossible for most pilots. "All units, form up on me," Mason ordered through the comms. "We're going after that command cluster at coordinates 2127 by 184. "There's a gap in their screen," he announced. "Exploit it! Now!" The Terran Vanguard surged forward, their smaller, more agile ships slipping past the Krelthax defenders. They unleashed a barrage of fire on the exposed flanks of the command ships, their weapons enhanced with the very technology they had stolen from the enemy. Explosions bloomed in the vacuum of space as Krelthax ships succumbed to the precision strikes. The enemy formation began to falter, creating openings for the main Allied fleet to exploit. As Mason piloted the Humanity's Hope through a corkscrew maneuver to avoid enemy fire, his comm crackled to life. It was Lyra, her voice urgent but controlled. "Commander, we have a situation planetside. Some Krelthax ships have breached the orbital defenses. They're entering Earth's atmosphere." Mason's mind focused. "Understood. Relay coordinates to all available fighter squadrons. We need to contain this incursion." The battle shifted, with furious dogfights erupting in Earth's skies. Human pilots, intimately familiar with their home planet's atmospheric conditions, used every trick in their arsenal. They barrel-rolled through storm systems, used cloud cover for surprise attacks, and executed high-G maneuvers that left their Krelthax pursuers struggling to keep up. From his vantage point above the planet, Mason watched in awe as Earth's defenders turned their world itself into a weapon. Krelthax ships, unused to operating in such dynamic conditions, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. A new alert blared through the command channel. The Vulcan flagship, under Captain Horus, had taken critical damage. Mason didn't hesitate. "Terran Vanguard, form up," he ordered. "We're going in for a rescue operation." The Humanity's Hope led the charge, navigating through a treacherous field of debris and ongoing skirmishes. Mason's piloting skills were pushed to their limits as he wove between twisted hunks of metal and energy blasts. They reached the stricken Vulcan ship just as its engines began to fail. Mason coordinated the evacuation, his team working in perfect sync with the Vulcan crew. As the last of the survivors were brought aboard, a massive explosion rocked the sector. Tavel's voice came through, tinged with an unusual note of surprise. "Commander, a group of Krelthax ships has turned against their own fleet. They appear to be attacking other Krelthax vessels." Mason's mind raced, connecting the dots. It must be Dr. Zexara's faction. They're making their move. The battle took on a new dimension as the Krelthax fleet fractured from within. Mason seized the opportunity, coordinating with General Steele to launch a full-scale assault on the disorganized enemy. As the tide of battle began to turn, Mason received a priority transmission from Earth Command. General Steele's face appeared on the display, his expression a mix of willpower and grim purpose. "Commander, we're activating our secret weapon," Steele announced. "The EMP generator is ready for deployment. I need your team to clear a path for the launch vehicle." Mason nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. "We're on it, sir. Terran Vanguard, new objective. We're running interference for the big play." The Humanity's Hope and its escort fighters formed a wedge formation, punching through the Krelthax lines with a combination of speed and firepower. They created a corridor of relative calm in the chaos of battle, allowing the EMP launch vehicle to slip through. As the device neared its target, Mason held his breath. The fate of Earth rested on this moment. The EMP generator detonated in a blinding flash of light, sending out waves of energy that washed over the Krelthax fleet. Ship after ship went dark, their systems overloaded and disabled. A cheer went up across the Allied communication channels as the Krelthax invasion force began to crumble. But Mason's relief was short-lived. A massive shape emerged from the disabled Krelthax fleet, a dreadnought of unprecedented size and power. "All Allied ships be advised," came the urgent transmission from Earth Command. "We've identified the vessel as the flagship of Grand Admiral Zorkath. It's on a direct course for Earth, armed with planet-destroying weapons." Mason's mind raced, assessing options and discarding them just as quickly. The dreadnought's shields were too strong for a conventional assault, and its weapons could annihilate Earth's defenses in a single salvo. "I'll lead a small team to infiltrate the dreadnought," Mason explained. "We'll disable it from the inside while the fleet keeps it occupied." As Mason began preparations for the most crucial mission of his life, he looked out at the looming form of Zorkath's dreadnought. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy, now rested on the success of this risky move. Mason's fingers flew across the control panel, initiating the launch sequence for their modified stealth shuttle. The small craft detached from the carrier with barely a whisper, its sleek form disappearing into the chaos of the battle surrounding them. "All systems green," Lyra reported from the co-pilot's seat. "Stealth field holding steady." "That's our way in," Mason said, his hands tightening on the controls. Everyone strap in. This is going to be close. The shuttle accelerated, weaving through debris fields and energy blasts. Mason's piloting skills were pushed to their limits as he navigated the treacherous approach. Time seemed to slow as they neared the barrier, the gap flickering open like a hungry maw. With a burst of speed that plastered the crew to their seats, Mason threaded the shuttle through the opening. They cleared the barrier with mere centimeters to spare, the shuttle's hull vibrating as the energy field snapped shut behind them. "By the depths of Vulcan's forge," Tavel muttered, her usual composure slipping for a moment. Mason allowed himself a grim smile. "Welcome aboard the Dreadnought, folks. Let's not overstay our welcome." "Stay in constant communication," Mason ordered as they parted. "If anything goes sideways, we abort and regroup at the shuttle." The corridors of the Dreadnought were a maze of twisting metal, bathed in an eerie red glow. Mason's team encountered their first resistance at a security checkpoint. The Krelthax guards, towering figures encased in battle armor, opened fire immediately. Mason dove for cover, the smell of ozone filling the air as energy bolts sizzled past. He signaled to his team, and they responded with practiced precision. 2 human Marines laid down suppressing fire, while a Vulcan operative used a sonic disruptor to shatter the guard's armor. In the close quarters, hand-to-hand combat became inevitable. Mason found himself grappling with a Krelthax soldier, the alien's superior strength nearly overwhelming him. But Mason's training on Earth's varied terrains had honed his reflexes and adaptability. He used the Krelthax's momentum against him, sending the guard crashing into a bulkhead. As they fought their way closer to the bridge, Mason's comm crackled to life. Lyra's voice came through, tense but controlled. "Mason, we've reached the power core, but we've hit a snag. The security protocols are more advanced than we anticipated." "Can you bypass them?" Mason asked, ducking as another energy bolt scorched the air above his head. "We're working on it," Lyra replied, "but every attempt triggers new countermeasures. We might have to resort to a more direct approach." Mason understood the implication. A direct sabotage could trigger the ship's self-destruct sequence. It was a risk they might have to take. "Do what you have to," he said, "but be ready to pull out at a moment's notice." The assault team reached the final approach to the bridge. The doors loomed before them, a massive barrier of alien metal. Mason prepared to give the order to breach when the ship suddenly shuddered violently. Warning klaxons blared through the corridors, and Mason's comm erupted with Lyra's urgent voice. The bridge doors opened with a hiss, revealing the command center of the Dreadnought. And there, towering over his subordinates, stood Grand Admiral Zorkath himself. The Krelthax leader turned, his eyes locking onto Mason. Without a word, he activated an energy shield, isolating himself and Mason from the rest of the bridge. "So the humans send their best to face me," Zorkath rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "Let us see if the Deathworlders are truly worthy of that title." Zorkath's strength was incredible, his blows threatening to shatter bone. But Mason was quicker, more agile. He ducked and weaved, using the Krelthax's own power against him. Each time Zorkath struck, Mason redirected the force, slowly wearing down his opponent. As they fought, Mason's mind raced. He couldn't defeat Zorkath through strength alone, not with the ship about to explode. He needed a new strategy, something unexpected. Suddenly an idea formed. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but it was their only chance. Mason allowed Zorkath to drive him back, closer to the hangar bay doors. With a series of quick maneuvers, he reached the control panel and thumped his hand down on the emergency release. The bay doors flew open, the vacuum of space howling into the ship. Zorkath, caught off guard, was pulled towards the opening. Mason's specialized suit, designed for Earth's harshest environments, activated its emergency protocols, allowing him to maintain his footing. For a moment, Zorkath teetered on the edge of the bay, his claws scrabbling for purchase. Then, with a roar of defiance, he was sucked out into the void of space. "Lyra," he panted into his comm, "Zorkath is neutralized. What's the status on that self-destruct?" 2 minutes, Mason," came the reply. "We're heading for the escape pods now." "Understood. All teams evacuate immediately. Get to the pods." Mason sprinted through the corridors, his muscles screaming with fatigue. He reached the pod bay just as Lyra and her team arrived from the other direction. "Go, go!" he shouted, ushering them into the waiting pods. As the last pod launched, Mason took one final look at the dreadnought's interior. In less than a minute, this ship would be reduced to atoms, taking with it the threat that had loomed over Earth. The escape pod rocketed away from the dreadnought, joining the others in a desperate race against time. Behind them, the massive ship began to glow, energy building to catastrophic levels. Then, in a flash brighter than a sun, the dreadnought exploded. The shock wave caught the pods, sending them tumbling through space. Mason gritted his teeth as G-forces slammed into him, his specially designed suit once again proving its worth as it kept him from blacking out. In the distance, he could see the Krelthax fleet in disarray. Without their leader and their most powerful weapon, they were beginning to retreat. The combined Earth and Vulcan forces pressed their advantage, driving the invaders back. Mason's comm crackled to life, General Steele's voice coming through. Mason allowed himself a small smile. "Mission accomplished, sir. Zorkath is defeated and his dreadnought is destroyed. The Krelthax are in full retreat." There was a moment of silence, then a cheer erupted over the comm channel. The sound of celebration filled the small pod as the magnitude of their victory began to sink in. As the escape pod was retrieved by a nearby Earth vessel, Mason found himself looking towards the stars. They had won this battle, but he knew that their journey was nowhere near the end. Earth had proven itself on the galactic stage, and now they would have to navigate the complex web of interstellar politics and alliances. But for now, as Earth grew larger in the view screen and the remnants of the Krelthax fleet disappeared into the depths of space, Mason allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope for the future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity had shown that they were ready to face them.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.